Good morning and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Clinton Griffiths. Oklahoma producers are working their way through calving season, but it's never too early to start thinking about next year's calf crop. That's why this week we're beginning a series on artificial insemination. SUNUPs Kathy Shelton is here with a look at what it takes to get started.
Purebred and beef cattle producers can profitably utilize artificial insemination on their virgin heifers and cow herd if they pay close attention to detail. Here to talk to us about that this morning is reproductive physiologist Bob Wetteman. Good morning, Bob.
Good morning.
First of all, and before we get to the details, let's talk about AI in general and how common is it in the beef cattle industry?
Only about 8% of the beef cattle in the United States are artificially inseminated. Part of the reason is because these cattle are managed so extensively, it's very difficult to determine when is the proper time to inseminate them.
So if we're trying to detect the proper time, what's the first thing that we need to do?
What we need to do is to observe animals and watch for their behavior. When a cow is in estrus or heat, she stands to be mounted by other animals, but there are a lot of factors that influence this, such as the number of cows that are in estrus or the time of the year.
And what do we look for? What are we looking for when we're doing heat
The
detection?
best thing to do if we observe animals, and we should do it at least twice a day, usually early in the morning and late in the evening during the cooler parts of the day, what we look for is an animal that will stand to be mounted by another animal, and this is our only sign that tells us when that cow might ovulate so that we can determine when she should be inseminated.
And how often, after you detect that they're in estrus, then what happens? When do you artificially inseminate them?
Well, cow is in estrus on an average about 18 hours. Some animals at their first estrus after calving might only be in estrus for about 6 or 8 hours, so this becomes more difficult to detect them. A cow ovulates about 30 hours after she starts standing, and because there's a short fertile life for both the sperm and the ova, it's important that we have proper timing.
What kind of aids can you use to detect estrus?
We have some very economical aids, and we also have some costly ones. For instance, for our research program here, we use a telemetry system which allows us to determine when a cow is mounted and it sends a signal to the computer, so we can very accurately determine when a cow first begins her estrus. Other more economical ones would be using a livestock marker to mark on the tail of the cow. And if you do this, you can tell when other animals have ridden that cow because he'll rub the mark off the tail, and this is our indication that she has been in estrus. The ideal way to determine when to inseminate a cow is actually to see a cow standing, and this then is a foolproof way to know this cow is really in estrus.
So as soon as you see them in standing heat, then how many hours is it after that?
When a cow is in standing heat, she's going to ovulate about 30 hours later. This is when she first stands. If we observe our cows twice daily for estrus, when we first see her standing, she might be in estrus for a couple of minutes or 12 hours. And so that's why the common rule we use is to inseminate a cow about 12 hours after we first see her in estrus, which would be somewhere between 12 to 24 hours after the onset of estrus, which would then be pretty good timing to ensure that we have a good chance for pregnancy.
So something you really have to pay close attention to.
That's right. Details are important.
Okay.
And the most important thing is to spend the time with the animals and don't try to detect estrus when you're in a hurry. You need to watch the cows and make sure that they're showing normal behavior and you can identify the proper cows.
Is there a certain time of day that's best to observe them?
Usually early in the morning and late in the evening. If we have a lot of cows that we're going to be inseminating, probably 3 or 4 times a day would be more important because we'd have a better opportunity to detect them. Cows at their first estrus after calving might only be in estrus for 6 hours and be mounted 10 times, whereas later estruses usually last about 18 hours and a cow might be mounted as many as 30 times, depending on the number of other cows that are in estrus.
Is something like artificial insemination, would that help the profits at all of some of these beef cattle producers if they were to utilize it more?
Offers some real opportunities. A couple of places where it has a role is you could inseminate first calf cows with semen from a bull that produces calves with lighter birth weight, and this could have a very important effect of decreasing calving difficulty. Another important factor would be that we increase the growth rate of those calves that are sired by those genetically superior sires, and so we have more pounds of calf to sell. Also, we have the opportunity to use traits that will improve our cow herd, and so that we can use bulls artificially that we can't afford to purchase as an individual, and this gives us some real opportunities to improve our herd.
So if the producers out there thinking about starting this in their herd, what's the first thing that they need to do? Is there training that they need to go through? Can they just pick up a book and read about it, or how does that work?
As far as detecting estrus, it's very easy to learn how to detect estrus. As far as learning how to place the semen in the proper location in the reproductive tract of the female, this takes practice, and so I would recommend attending a school that gives you hands-on practice as far as learning how to put the sperm cells in the right location in the female.
All right, Bob, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.